So I'm going to start in April of 2023. The victim had run away from her school. Patrol deputies responded, they found her. And at one point she started saying, well, I'm going to go find this adult male, that's where I'm going to. Because of the training our members go through to fight human trafficking, they recognize there's something absolutely wrong here, so that's when they call in major crimes to handle the investigation. So major crime steps in, but I'm going to back up to December of 2022. So in December of 2022, the victim, she's 15, about to turn 16 years old. She meets the suspect. His name is Randy Kohlfeldt. They met on a social media site called Chat Avenue. They go on Chat Avenue, they're on a side chat, but then they decide to go to a private chat in the corner. And let me explain this. The victim's around 15, 16 at this time. Randy Kohlfeldt is a 44-year-old male. During this conversation, they start talking. Randy starts manipulating her through these conversations to the fact that the victim believes that he loves her. They're kind of like a boyfriend-girlfriend situation. And she wants to make him happy. She's saying, I'm looking for love. I want somebody to make me happy. But I want to point something out. From the very beginning of their conversations, when they first start speaking, the victim says, hey, I just want to let you know I'm 15 years old. And he goes, that's okay, I like them young. From the very beginning, a 44-year-old male knows this is a 15-year-old. And he says, I don't care. You know, this is where this tragedy just keeps going out of control. Randy Kohlfeldt then gets naked pictures of the victims. He then starts pushing them out there, trying to get other pedophiles out there. And so what Randy Kohlfeldt started doing was manipulating the whole situation. He had naked pictures of the victim. He then started posting on a social media site for other pedophiles to go out there and other scumbags to start looking at. Then his plan was that he was going to have them make videos with this girl. He was soliciting her out. Now Randy is up in Clay County, and down here in Pasco County, he's soliciting this 15-year-old girl to have sex with people to make videos. So that's what he was doing. So he would set him up. He'd say, hey, look, I want you to make this video. And then he was putting on a website called Adult Friend Finder. And I guess on this site, there's a $30 charge to get in, then you can charge additionally to watch these videos. But it's basically, this is child pornography that they're setting up and they're putting on these sites. And so, you know, as he's going through this, this girl's now 16 years old. And so men start showing up to her house. On March 19th of 2023, Randy Kohlfeldt arranged for 69-year-old Sydney Smith to have sexual intercourse with the 16-year-old victim. Sydney Smith picks her up at her house. They drive to Sydney's house. He's getting her drunk at the place. They start videotaping it. But this is how sick this whole situation is. Randy Kohlfeldt starts telling the victim, you're not doing it right. This is what I want you to do. I don't want to get into details of it. It's horrible. But he's basically directing what's going on. He's getting upset with her. And at one point he says, if you're not going to do what I tell you, I'll just find other girls. So you just see a 44-year-old male manipulating this 16-year-old little girl. On March 19th and March 20th, 33-year-old Brandon Sarno was picked up the victim at her house. Brandon Sarno went to the woods with her. They started using drugs. He then pulls out his cell phone as if he's going to record, but then he says, oh, my recording didn't work, which, of course, the main suspect in this case gets upset about. But I'm going to point out two things. One is Brandon Sarno was arrested in 2013 for similar style charges under an FDLE sting. FDLE did their job. But unfortunately, this suspect, this criminal, this scumbag, was back out on the street, and he did it again. The other part is, we believe that he was street smart. He knew that he had made that video and then sent it to Randy, that would have been additional charges. So he's like, oh, my phone didn't work. But that's the type of people we're dealing with. But let me point out that also at this time, Brandon Sarno starts grooming the victim. He starts figuring out, this girl's vulnerable. I'm right here in this community. Let me start grooming her. On March the 20th, Randy Kohlfeldt tells the victim that another male is going to be coming to her house. Randy Kohlfeldt tells the victim exactly where to go, how to perform these sexual acts. The 29-year-old John Kahindi picks her up at the house. They go to the Days Inn in Port Richey. They perform the sexual acts and videotape it and then send it to Randy Kohlfeldt. Then afterwards, and then he uploads it to Adult Friend Finder again, and John Kahindi then takes the victim to the store to get vape. Randy Kohlfeldt kept demanding more of the victim. And at this point, the victim's kind of like, whoa, what's going on? Are you uploading these videos? Are you doing this? And he's like, no, I'm not doing that. And so she kind of breaks it off where she stops communicating with him. Randy Kohlfeldt then emails her. He starts sending explicit pictures of adult males. He then asks her, do you still love me? What's going on? Do you still want to make these videos? And she kind of hangs up and she starts engaging that person. So I go back to the beginning of the story in April of 2023 when deputies pick her up. She was actually, what she was going when she ran away from school was that she was trying to find Brandon Sarno, who I go back to was the second suspect in this case that FDLE had arrested back in 2013, who was back out in the streets being a predator, trying to manipulate these young girls. And who would have known what this guy would have done had, patrol deputies not picked her up and not rescued her from that situation. So I know I'm trying to go through this. It's a big case. But what I'm saying, I go back to it. What our detectives had to see on those videos, what the, Rita Peters had to go through, I can never explain it. I will never want to explain it. I will never want to talk about it. But it's horrific. Randy Caulfield on his phone, they're still going through the investigation through search warrants. I mean, we did everything we were supposed to do legally. We went through search warrants, got everything we had to do. You find videos of 2 to 6 year old kids, over hundreds of them. They're saying they're still going through and they can't find hundreds of them. But you're seeing, male, female, bestiality. You're seeing things that nobody should ever have to see. This Randy Caulfield, I know one thing he said was that he's scared to death to go into prison. Randy Caulfield, you should be scared to death to have to see God. God's going to be the ultimate decider upon you for what you've done to all these people. As I go back to, this is still an ongoing case. There's a couple things I want to explain and talk about, and the fact that what we need out there from the community. One is we need anybody else who's been a victim, anybody, realize you're the victim. It's not your fault. Please have the courage to come forward. Please come forward, help out, because as bad as you feel, there's somebody else who feels horrible too, and maybe you are the one that rescues them. The other one too is with human trafficking. Everybody thinks, oh, this happens in the streets, it happens in, restaurants or massage parlors. It's happening online now. So be aware of that. For parents, recognize this young girl, she had her iPad taken away from her, she had her phone taken away from her. But what wasn't taken away was the TV. So she was using a television app to go on there and communicate with Randy Caulfield. We have to find a way to civilly go after these websites. If they're not going to protect our kids, we need to go after them. They have a civil responsibility to protect children. If they know what's going on, the content going on there, we have to go after them. And then the other one is, we can never live in a society where pedophilia is normal. I say that with deepest sincerity. We cannot live in a society where pedophilia is normal. These young kids have no idea what's going on. They're being manipulated. And for those 2 to 6 year olds that are on that site, this is horrible. We cannot normalize this. And with that being said, before I bring the general up, I just ask again, everybody pray. I ask God Almighty to look upon. Nobody has to go through this hell that these kids are living.